Narcissist is a term that gets thrown around a lot. Is narcissist just another buzzword to describe someone who is carnal or selfish? Some people may have this preconceived idea. You may be around people who think that to be carnal is to be narcissistic, but that is a gross oversimplification of narcissism. Narcissism is much more sinister and deep-seated than being carnal. And in this video, I'm going to explain the main differences between the two. Now first, before we get into it, for those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. I'm Shaneen Megji. I'm a coach that helps people to heal and recover their identities from toxic relationships. I also help people to successfully navigate difficult life transitions. Welcome to my channel on Toxicity is Not Your Destiny. I create these videos to help you to navigate toxic relationships in your life from a biblical, practical, and spiritual perspective. So if you'd like to receive regular content from me on this subject, take a moment, click that subscribe button, and click that bell, because I'm going to be bringing you videos on a regular basis around every week or so to empower you in navigating toxic relationships in your life. So without further ado, let's dive into the subject. To begin, let's define the term carnal and narcissist. A carnal person is someone who is controlled by the desires and the appetites of their flesh. Their manner of living and functioning is wrapped up in their five senses: what they see, hear, taste, smell, and touch. Their hunger to satisfy the longings of their five senses overtakes any discipline they would otherwise have to pursue higher things of spiritual and eternal value. People who are carnal are focused on satisfying their own sensual needs. They are led by their passions and lusts. It really is a lower level living, because the lives of such people are not dictated by things of spiritual value, but what is of earthly value, the pleasures of life that bring them immediate gratification. Now, is a narcissist carnal? Yes. A narcissist is someone who is most certainly controlled by emotions of the flesh. We know that narcissism is marked by traits of arrogance, pride, grandiosity, entitlement, rage, envy, manipulation, deception, exploiting people, slandering, causing strife. Galatians 5:19 outlines the carnal nature very well when it says, "Now the deeds of the flesh are evident, which are sexual immorality, impurity, indecent behavior, idolatry, witchcraft, hostilities, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and things like these, of which I forewarn you, just as I have forewarned you, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God." So many of the traits of the flesh listed in Galatians 5 are traits that a narcissist would engage in. So a narcissist can certainly be carnal. Does that mean that a carnal person is a narcissist? Not necessarily. A narcissist is most certainly carnal, but a carnal person is not necessarily a narcissist. So let's talk about why. A narcissist and a carnal person can look very similar. Both can be arrogant, entitled, manipulative, lacking in empathy. You may mistake a carnal person for a narcissist because of this, and hence some people might just assume that to be carnal is to be narcissistic, but that's a false assumption. A narcissist is wired and motivated very differently from a carnal person, and it's that wiring and motivation that make them much more dangerous and destructive than a carnal person. Although the behaviors or traits can look similar between a narcissist and a carnal person, what you want to look at is what is driving those behaviors. What are the motivations behind the deeds of the flesh? This is where the rubber meets the road. As I mentioned, a carnal person is driven by their fleshly desires and passions. A narcissist is driven by those things to a degree, but their highest drive, which overrides everything, is their drive for validation, admiration, affirmation, significance, or honor. This is what we call narcissistic supply. A narcissist is like a drug addict when it comes to pursuing narcissistic supply. They are dependent on this external validation in order to regulate their negative emotions. Narcissists do not have the capacity from within to do it for themselves, so they're constantly looking for people around them who can do it. This is what drives most of their interactions and relationships with people. A carnal person, on the other hand, may be motivated by their passions and lusts, but they do not suffer from this crippling emotional handicap that a narcissist has. They have the resources within to regulate their own negative emotions. Their issue is that they lack discipline and self-control. A narcissist, however, suffers from a rigid, dysfunctional structure of their personality as a result of trauma or abuse from their childhood, so they need a miracle from God for healing from their narcissism. Now, I mentioned that a narcissist is carnal, and that is true. However, in some circumstances, a narcissist will forego being carnal in order to attain narcissistic supply, because that is ultimately what they're after. If getting honor, validation, and significance means that a narcissist has to forego their fleshly appetites, a narcissist will do that, or at least suppress their fleshly appetites for as long as it takes, or for as long as they can do it. It is covert narcissists that will do things to conceal their narcissism and fleshly appetites in order to look pious or godly. That is why Jesus called the Pharisees whitewashed tombs, because they looked good on the outside, but inside they were full of dead man's bones. So a narcissist can look totally opposite of a carnal person. A narcissist can be the most disciplined, charitable, hardworking person of the bunch and actually suppress their carnal nature. They can actually put the most spiritually disciplined person to shame because they're so good at mirroring the people around them in order to build rapport and gain narcissistic supply. For example, a covert narcissist who decides to become a pastor of a church may suppress all of their physical carnal appetites in order to fast, to pray, to give charitably, and live an outwardly pious life in order to gain the admiration and honor from their spiritual followers. But they might act in a very different way behind closed doors where they might cast off restraint. So they may conceal their emotional carnality by using their gifts, talents, and intelligence, their outward piety, their appearance of piety, and making those things as a badge of endorsement from God. That is the covert narcissistic side of it. So a narcissist is carnal. Their emotions are especially carnal, but they can camouflage their carnality with the appearance of piety. They can overly discipline their flesh to compensate for their carnal emotions. They can rely on their gifts and intelligence and charm and all that to camouflage their carnality. So now that I've shared with you the difference between what drives a carnal person versus what drives a narcissist, let's look at the four main differences between the two. Number one, empathy. A carnal person may be selfish and self-centered, but they still have the capacity for heartfelt empathy and compassion. A carnal person may not always act on these feelings, but they are capable of feeling them. In contrast, a narcissist lacks empathy for others. They are unable to see things from another person's perspective and are often indifferent to the feelings of others. It's this lack of empathy that can cause a narcissist to exploit people, to have unreasonable demands of them, to devalue them, and eventually discard them. A carnal person, on the other hand, has the capacity for more of the heartfelt empathy than a narcissist. If a carnal person was to engage in some of the callous behaviors that a narcissist does, they are likely to be plagued with guilt and remorse afterward, but a narcissist simply does not feel guilt or remorse. He or she does not believe they did anything wrong, but other people are to blame for their wrongful actions. Number two, self-awareness. A carnal person has some self-awareness. A carnal person may be aware of their flaws and weaknesses, but they may struggle to overcome them due to their fleshly desires and being tempted. On the other hand, a narcissist is often completely unaware of their own faults and may even view themselves as perfect and without fault. If there are problems or conflicts in relationships, a narcissist inevitably pins the blame on other people or circumstances. It's always something out there that is the blame. A narcissist does not have the capacity to go deep within themselves to self-reflect or uncover their part to play in the problems they face in life. In fact, a narcissist will do everything in their power to avoid any such self-reflection because they avoid shame at all costs. They will blame shift, project, deflect, and gaslight, all in an attempt to avoid looking within, because to look within puts them at risk for feeling shame, and shame is the ultimate threat to their existence, because they believe that their false grandiose self is who they really are, and any shame could annihilate that. Proverbs 28:13 reminds us that whoever conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy. Number 3, regulating emotions. As I mentioned, a narcissist is addicted to narcissistic supply. They function like drug addicts in their careers, ministries, and relationships. Everything for them is revolved around securing narcissistic supply to regulate their negative emotions, because otherwise they are crippled and cannot function in life. A carnal person, on the other hand, can still regulate their emotions, even in all their carnality. Number 4, the core self. A carnal person has developed a core sense of self, even though they may struggle with all kinds of temptations and weaknesses, while a narcissist has not developed nor cultivated any core sense of self. In their formative years, instead of their core self being developed and nurtured by their parent or caregivers, the narcissist created a false self with godlike features as a defense mechanism to cope with the abuses and traumas of life. So instead of a narcissist having a core sense of self that permeates who they are in all their relationships, in all their circumstances, and the things they do, they are developmentally arrested. A narcissist operates out of a false self that behaves like a chameleon, which shifts and changes with every single person they interact with, every single environment that they're in. In essence, you never really know who the narcissist is. They can completely reinvent themselves with new people and new settings and circumstances with every change of life direction. So much so that they do not resemble the person they were before. You feel like you are dealing with a stranger. You feel like you never knew them. A narcissist is able to live with many internal contradictions. You might know them as someone who is introverted, who loves the countryside, someone who is not a fan of the concrete or the city, and the next thing you know, they're moving their life into the heart of a big city, partying it up with a new circle of people, and suddenly they're unable to be by themselves. You can be in an intimate relationship with them for a decade or think you're in one. You can bond with them and your love for them can deepen over time, but they never bond with you and you never really know them. A carnal person is on their way of becoming like the righteous man described in Proverbs, who falls 7 times but gets back up. They may still be working on their issues. With a carnal person, there is still a level of self-awareness that enables them to self-reflect and humble themselves, to take ownership and seek to overcome and turn to God for help. There is a level of heartfelt empathy where they can recognize the pain or harm they have caused to others and turn away from it by the grace of God. A narcissist, unfortunately, does not have the same advantage. Their plight is much deeper and much more fatal. They lack self-awareness. They do not see their faults. They have zero to little heartfelt empathy. They need a serious intervention from God. And I would be curious to know if there's anyone out there, anyone watching, who knows of someone who is diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, who experienced the healing and deliverance of Jesus Christ and no longer has narcissistic personality disorder. That is the kind of miracle I would long to see. Now, I mentioned earlier that a narcissist is a lot more destructive and dangerous than a carnal person, and here's the reason why. A narcissist has 2 impediments, and both of them together are a deadly combo. And I mentioned them. So the first one is lack of empathy with lack of self-awareness. If you bring these 2 together, you have a deadly duo, and you do not want to be in a relationship with someone like this. If you are in a relationship with someone who does not have the capacity to have heartfelt empathy towards you and who is not self-aware, I would advise you to run. You are dealing with a destructive person. Now, you can work with a person who is carnal, who has narcissistic traits, as long as they have empathy, where they're able to put themselves in your shoes at a heart level. I'm not talking about a cognitive level, I'm talking about from the heart. And as long as they can self-reflect and own up to their wrongs or their part to play when there are problems or conflicts in relationships. But if you are with someone who has neither, where they could not care less about your feelings or factor you into the equation, where they are exploitative, where they have unreasonable, over-the-top expectations of you, and where they are ever blame shifting, deflecting, projecting, gaslighting, and never looking within to see what part they have to play, to the degree that you have someone operating this way, you are dealing with a dangerous person. You need to get away from someone like this. So I hope that what I shared in this video gave you some clarity between the key differences between a carnal person and a narcissist. Now, if you are thinking of leaving or have left a toxic environment and you're in a season of transition, check out a free training I have put together. It is all about 3 key ways to navigate a difficult transition. These are things that brought a massive breakthrough in my life when I was going through a difficult transition. I have included the link in the description box below. If you would like to see more content from me and have not subscribed yet, click that subscribe button and click that bell so that you can get all the alerts, because I will be posting videos on a regular basis to empower you in navigating toxic relationships. And if you have other topics of subjects you would like me to cover, please feel free to drop your ideas in the comments section. Thank you so much, and this brings me to the end of my video. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.